is going on LinkedIn, maybe. Nope, it doesn't want to cooperate on the event. It never does. But we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So, welcome everybody to another episode of Let's Build Workspaces with Danielle Urban and Bryan Ossa. Welcome back. How you doing?
Hello there. Doing fantastic and always excited to be here. And welcome back to everyone in the States at least, who enjoyed the holiday last week.
Yeah, it was nice to have some downtime. Looking forward to a little bit more at the end of this year for sure. And hopefully this cold won't hold me back for too
Yeah,
much longer. But I'm excited to be here today. We are talking about journey mapping in in and out of HubSpot, but thinking through like life cycles, lead cycle management, opportunity stages. These things all sort of fit together, and it's like a massive jigsaw puzzle that HubSpot doesn't really help you visualize how these pieces connect and what to do with them. I know there are some journey tools in the works, which I'm very excited about with HubSpot, to start to show you some of those touch points prior to someone becoming a customer. But today we really want to talk about sort of piecing together all of these different features and object types that we have, um, to give you a basis of like how the whole freaking thing runs and what talks to the other thing. And so I know you are an absolute master of mapping out flowcharts and getting this together. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts and how you approach this.
absolutely. And yeah, this is something that's really close to my heart for a variety of reasons. And I know the whole concept around revenue operations, in all honesty, really was just based off of this concept of looking at the user flow at a larger point of view. Oh, goody! My camera decided to act up again. I will work on getting that back
Weird.
online. But while I work on getting that back online, the whole concept behind it, again, as mentioned, based off of revenue operations. And RevOps really is all about aligning, sales with marketing with customer support. And your first question's often just how do I do that and where do I even begin? And when you're trying to navigate through where to begin on that, uh, that's that's the whole concept behind the journey map. It's you pulling together your start all the way through the finish, and then building that into a flywheel methodology.
Yeah,
And
I
that's everything. That's essentially all you're doing with this process mapping.
There's been a lot of conversation on LinkedIn, I know, among consultants around, HubSpot is not a strategy. HubSpot is not like plug and play. They make it seem pretty easy to get up and running, and it is. I know Sarah and I are covering the hidden HubSpot settings later today, and things that you need to sort of pay attention to as you get started. But really, you need to come back to the basics of how does your business map into the tool, and understanding the journey sort of from the outside. Looks like we lost Bryan. Hopefully, he'll be able to rejoin. But understanding that journey from outside of the tool stack that you have, and being able to map that journey into the tool stack, and making sure that you are setting up the system to work for you and your business is really the basis of getting your team aligned, in the tools to be able to run that flywheel and implement RevOps strategies and not just have everybody sitting in their silos. Welcome back. Glad you
Definitely.
made it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So I think the first place to start when it comes to this is really just understanding, like, now that we understand what journey mapping is and understanding how to do it. And the how to do it really starts with, like, honestly, the technology you're applying. And a really good approach that I would recommend doing is leaning into, some kind of whiteboard. And whether or not you're literally writing it down like pen and paper, or you're using something like Lucid Chart or Miro, or honestly, you can even do these things through like a Google presentation or like a Microsoft PowerPoint. Like it's really just the concept of just finding a shape, defining what that shape means to you in this context, and then connecting the dots, and doing that through like the various different interconnected lines. And that's all you really need to start. And if you've never done this before, I would recommend leaning into Miro. And that's just because it's truly a blank canvas. And you can do all kinds of things with it, from preloading templates all the way to just custom creating your own shapes and diagrams.
Yeah, I love Miro. Usually, one of the first steps I take with a new client is mapping out where their life cycle stages, lead stages, deal stages, all of that overlaps. And you almost always find inconsistencies between contacts and companies and what gets associated to deals and how those automations are set up. Um, and so, taking that step back and just understanding what it is that runs your business. What are you making decisions off of, and getting that outside of the tool, and then auditing that against the tools that you have. Um, that should be step zero. You should basically do that like once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Revisit it with your sales team, with your marketing team. Make sure that you're aligned on what those definitions are for each stage, because then you can actually build an efficient system. And so I know that you've got an example brewing over there that I would love to see as a starting point. I know mine, I start pretty simplistic because it's easier to have the conversation with the client and sort of add details as I go. And I just start with boxes for each stage, and then add some notes in a text box outside of that as to what defines that stage, because then you can just sort of group and drag things and see literally where is the overlap. Like if this is a contact stage and this is a company stage, where do they line up, where do they not, and you can sort of separate that and get a visual mapping of how these pieces fit together. So if you've got company is customer, contact is customer, and deal stage is closed won, they should all be aligned like vertically so that you can see that they literally overlap. They are the same thing, and just sort of getting that out visually. Um, Again, you are the master of flowcharts and charting here, so I can't wait to explore this side of your brain.
Oh yeah,
I'm a little scared.
absolutely. And I'm working on getting a couple things pulled up over here. And the reason why there isn't just one example that I want to dive into. There's a couple. And the logic behind all of that is that you're essentially, not you, but this can like these kinds of maps can take all kinds of forms. And it's really the whole exercise that you're doing here is fulfilling the purpose of like taking a brain, like you're basically doing a brain dump. And like you're doing a brain dump, you're doing a version of that, and you're approaching almost like an experience that you do when you're first kicking off any kind of project or any kind of company. Like you're doing your analysis, you're understanding who's in the room and what you're looking to do. Like if you take away nothing else from this conversation, it's the fact that these 6 steps are pretty much all that you're doing during any kind of a mind map. And now using that, like there's a few different ways that you can do it. Like I said, there's iterations of this that are like completely hand drawn. And so this is a very, very old concept for a piece of like a series of content items that I worked with back when I was first kind of getting RPMO a little bit more organized. Good Lord, almost 2 years ago at this point. And it shows how everything is just kind of interconnected and the extent by which things are connected together. And then as you get this more built out and refined, you'll start having different ways that you'll visualize it. You'll visualize it in different trees. Whether that's complete mind mapping or user flow vertical down with A/B logic, and ultimately you want to get yourself to something that looks a little bit more like this, that pretty much shows your flow all the way from this. In this case, we're looking specifically at like a late marketing into a sales process, but this approach really kind of goes through, here's what you need to pay attention to for leads, here's all the different deal stages you need to be that you're going to be going through, here's your onboarding process, and understanding and mapping out, here's what happens when, and very tactically paying attention to the things that you need to update. So, like I mentioned, in this case, we were looking at HubSpot. So when you're creating a new lead, before you can even go into any steps within the sales pipeline from this context, all of this information, and like when I say all this information, referring to like the specific properties, whether that's the contact, the company, or the deal record, all need to be updated before you can even start going down into the sales pipeline. And then as you're going down the sales pipeline, you have these various different, some are automated, some are manual process that you just need to be making sure that you're following through on in order to just get through the process. And if you don't really know where to start with this, you're not alone. I know it's extremely complicated, and to just kind of
Feels really scary.
bring this initial introduction to a close is that starting somewhere is really the most important point. And once you're able to start somewhere, you can always, drag this around and rearrange how everything is connected. It's really easy to do that. That's all. But having something established is the first thing that you want to go with.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm quickly trying to anonymize my version here so I can share it as more of a starting point. Because I think going from, you know, either when you're onboarding HubSpot or you're running an audit where you already have HubSpot, or really if you're evaluating any other tools to add to your stack, you need to understand how it's going to fit into all of this. Um, and so having just a very basic starting point, I think I've got this to a point where I can share it. I'll pull up my screen as well as more of a like step zero. Um, like I said, this is where I start with a lot of my clients. Is just like, how do these pieces fit together?
Mm-hmm.
So in this example, I've got lead status, life cycle stages, and deal stages. And this doesn't even really speak to the differences between life cycle stages and company stages, which I think are important to define and understand how they fit together. But getting to this point and then sort of branching off from here to understand how someone would flow through these stages, this is like taking inventory, and the end result that you got to with that process map is like, how does someone move through this? And I think
Mm-hmm.
both are very important to understand because you've got so many touch points along those paths. And so this is defining what it is, and then the process map defines how someone moves through that. And the how gets so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why HubSpot is working on those journey solutions and the journey features that they are. Um, and so I know that when you start to map through that journey, you could have so many different entry points. You might have different charts that show that if someone came in through a trade show, if someone came in through a personal referral, you've got all these different ways that they could come in through various channels, and you need to understand what their path is going to look like. Are they interacting with content? And if they are, like if they're hitting your website, how many different technologies are they interacting with there? How do you optimize that experience to make sure that they're still flowing, they're still moving through those paths, and aligning to the goals and the stages or the stage gates that you've set for what defines them in your business, and how they're going to progress next, what it takes. And it's like, we're talking about this like everybody does it, but really there's so few people that have
Mm-hmm.
it to the point where you can be like, oh yeah, of course. It's constantly iterating and constantly trying to understand how all those pieces fit together. If you can at least align on what is definition, it gets your whole team uh, swimming in the same direction, basically. Like when you all know what an MQL is, you can establish trust across teams. When you all know what a deal stage is, and you know that those percentage close numbers are accurate, then you get a lot more trust, and everyone can sort of self-serve their reporting.
Hmm.
And so, uh, getting to that point is a great first step, because getting to, like, we know every single journey and how it maps and how it groups together is a pipe dream. Like, you
Hmm.
can get as close as possible, and especially when you're thinking about technology in your stack and how it fits into that flow. The only way that you can really measure ROI on something that you're adding to the stack is understanding how it fits in and being able to measure against that. So if you're evaluating, a new, I don't know, AI chatbot or something like that, and you want to see how it performs, you need to understand what you're trying to get it to do. Are you trying to get it to push more MQLs? Are you trying to get it to, move your MQLs to SQLs by taking certain actions? Like, unless you know what you're trying to accomplish with that, then it's not worth implementing.
Yes, and you're exactly right about that. And this is where you can leverage the power of an AI tool. And so, whether or not you're using Claude or ChatGPT or anything along those lines, a good way to get it started is just provide a briefed prompt that does the four key things that you need to include in every prompt. And that's basically what your goal is, what the instructions that you're providing to this bot is, what the outcome you expect it to be, and then any context related to this particular process. And so that is best done when you chunk it out into a couple initial prompts and let the bot guide that conversation with you, so that it can uncover the information that it needs in order to build out what you're looking for. So, an example of this could be opening up ChatGPT and giving a three-sentence prompt that essentially says, I am looking to map out my entire customer journey from marketing through sales all the way to customer support. I am building this. I manage all this through HubSpot, and I want to create a visual representation that I can share with the rest of my team. What information do you need from me to facilitate this process? That prompt right there will kick off a whole conversational dialogue between you and the bot, where it will be asking you for additional context that's tied to your organization, how you run, as well as more inquiries about the output that you want it to make. And then ultimately, after you've gone back and forth like 4 or 5 times, maybe not even, chances are that it's going to provide you with some kind of a diagram. And these tools usually use mermaid diagrams because it's very easy front end web technology in order to display. Now, the cool thing about that is you can pretty much build that in Miro in less than 10 seconds. And all you need to do is go through the conversation, have that mermaid diagram built out for you, and then if you agree with it, and you have no other edits, or honestly, even if you have plenty of edits, there's you can work with that once you're in Miro. Cop, go into Miro, and then open up their new AI builder and say, I want to create a flowchart based off of the following mermaid diagram, and then copy and paste the code. It will build it for you right then and there in Miro. And it saves so much time, and then with a very conversational experience, you've translated what is probably a very complicated process into something that is very easily visually articulated.
I love that. I haven't played with Miro's AI yet, but it's been a while. I've got an audit in front of me that's starting like tomorrow, so I will definitely try out these tricks as I get more familiar with that account. Um, it's been a minute since I've jumped into a new account, thankfully. But yeah, I haven't done that with ChatGPT, and I haven't even played with the Miro AI. But I can totally understand how useful that is, and translating it from natural language, I know we were talking a little bit about even call notes and translating call notes into a flowchart. So when you literally have a natural conversation with someone, in some of my early calls, if I record that with my client and then say, take these three transcripts or, pull out these points from this transcript and help me create a flowchart, you end up shortcutting hours and hours of work to get to a usable diagram that you can then turn back around to the client or to your team and say, like, is this right? Like, let's talk through this. And edit it so that we've got now documentation built, and all of a sudden you have a functioning diagram that you can all make decisions off of, and share with anybody else that needs to get up to speed with these processes in like 2 hours flat. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I can't wait to try that out.
Yeah, and and just kind of showing that example just in action really quickly. It's just you can see how easy and quick and how powerful this is. And granted, this prompt is nowhere near as robust as I would otherwise want it to be. But, we're kind of doing this as like a quick understanding of what we're like looking to build. But the first thing you notice immediately is, hey, what is like, it's going to ask a whole bunch of questions. And it asks this many questions because my context and like initial prompt was not that good. And that's the important part. And everything that I wanted to stress is just like the more information you provide initially, the fewer questions you're going to have to follow up on. And so just give it as much information as you can. If you have images or existing content, provide that too, but make sure you're explaining how all of that applies. And so, like using this example, I'm just going to tell it that assume that I've provided you all this information. And did you?
While you're typing that out, I will say asking a bot to ask you questions is like my favorite AI hack that people might not think about. Saying, if I
Mm-hmm.
want to accomplish XYZ, what questions do you need me to answer to better accomplish this? I just did that for some social posts, and it's amazing because then it gets specific. You can ask it to change tone once it's helped you get those written. Oh wow, that is quite the chart.
That is quite an experience. Yep.
Convo map. uh, we still love those AI quirks. I think if we had sort of a real life example ready to go, it might be a bit more
Yeah. But
descriptive. This is a
again,
great example, though.
but again, like this gives you two things in one. Like one, it shows just the power of context and just how not providing it doesn't work. And like even here, it's like, this is why it's important to tell it the output you're going for. Because I just said, give me a diagram, and it gave me it like, I mean,
Maybe
it gave me a
something.
diagram, but I wanted it to be this whole mermaid diagram. But now that I have this mermaid diagram, I can just copy this code and then go into no, go over into Miro and then create a new board and show a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in there. And then once I'm in there, just I want you go in here, you go into the Miro's AI, you say create a diagram. I want to a flow chart on the following mermaid. And then you say that, you indicate here's what everything's going to go. And then paste the code, say generate it, and after a couple seconds, here we go.
Wow.
Yes, there's going to be a little bit of cleanup and optimization that you're going to have to do. But look at how much time that you just saved just by going back and forth with a bot to have a couple conversation, understand where everything's going to be, and then you just dump it.
Yeah, I love that
It's
example.
hugely time saving.
I also know another AI hack that someone told me about a while ago. This was like last year, so before AI really hit the level of buzz that it has.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she is the host of a podcast called Secret Ops, focused on operations and businesses, and she was telling us that she talks out loud and records herself and then
Yes.
takes the transcript and feeds it into an AI to summarize or pull out new ideas or, ask more questions of. And that's the ultimate hack, because when you're sitting there typing, whether you are aware of it or not, you have some way of communicating with Google with an
You're
AI.
filtering.
But yeah, like your method of communication for that channel is different than how you might have a conversation with someone, or even just ramble on. Like, record yourself while you're out for a walk and see what happens. Um, and that just is such a huge shortcut that I feel like people don't know is available.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's why, like, that's the power of other AI tool, like AI note-taking apps, like Fathom, for example. You have Fathom sit on a video call with you. It's going to transcribe and take note of the whole conversation. And if you're having that conversation with a client, understanding their journey map, you've been given basically all the information that you need to have in order to create that journey within Miro. Because, like what we just saw with that demonstration, you provide the context and say, hey, look, I want to create a journey map for this client based off of this information. Here is the summary of points that I got from Fathom, and here's the whole transcript for that entire conversation. Based off of this, provide me with your understanding of the summary. And if that summary aligns with your interpretation, you have everything you need to start building this. And what used to take 3-4 days of brainstorming and ideating, you can do in an hour and a half. And I say this from experience, having I've literally done this for 3 different clients in the last week, and it's been on point with every single one. And so there's just so much power to these things. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, so you've mentioned a mermaid chart a few times. Can you give us like the 5-year-old explanation of a
Oh,
mermaid
yes.
chart, and maybe some other charts that might be useful to reference as you're building this out?
Yes. So for those of you who aren't familiar with mermaid chart, mermaid charts are essentially very simple HTML/Markdown based flow diagrams that are very popular, very popularly used by these AI tools to create charts. So ChatGPT will give you the code for it, but if you're using Claude actually has a front end visualization of the code that you're putting into play. And that is the one that I would like. If you're using these tools, that would be the approach that I would recommend, because because it allows you to pull something in, and you can very much interact and edit with it. However, if that isn't an option for you, you can ask it to build. You can ask it to build an image, and then it'll build that image for you. Download that image, and then just re-upload that image and basically say, hey, you could do this in another chat, or even ask in the same chat, hey, based off this image, create me a written workflow of this. Or download and re-upload and say, create a written workflow of what this looks like, and put it in a way that I can prompt Miro to create the flow chart accordingly. And when you do that, you're then given exactly the prompt, structure and verbiage needed to get the outcome you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, that's awesome. It makes things tool agnostic, which is very helpful when you're trying to move between those things, because ChatGPT is so powerful, but obviously is limited in creating images, as we just saw. Some weird words and extra fingers still. Um, and so when you need to move between platforms, I think that's so helpful to have, that background knowledge to know what to ask it for. I have this pipe dream that it sounds like we're getting closer to being achievable, of being able to take a PNG image exported from a HubSpot workflow or a screenshot of a HubSpot workflow, and being able to rebuild that automatically in Miro. I saw a solution that can do that in Lucidchart, but I pay for Miro, so I'm addicted. Um, and
You can with a workaround.
okay, tell me.
You
Because
can
let me
do
put some
that by
context out there.
working. You can do that by doing a workaround. I would recommend using Claude for this over ChatGPT, just because the front end visualizer. but you export the image and you import it into Claude, and you ask Claude to create a mermaid diagram from the PNG that you're putting into play. And then based on that based off that mermaid diagram, you then go into Miro, like what we were just describing, and go into the AI prompter and say, create a flowchart based off of this mermaid. Yes, it's one extra step, but you're able to basically do that.
Yeah, and I mean, the context for wanting this is when you're auditing an account and trying to understand what automations are in play, especially for life cycle stage changes and what's syncing to where and how it's getting written over. You lose a lot of context in the image because when you have like if-then branching and you might not have all of the triggers expanded to grab that, but it still gives you a lot just to have the baseline images of what's there and being able to build on that. And especially if you have multiple workflows that maybe connect or overflow into each other or do different things, there's not a great way to visualize how they maybe connect together. And so getting that into a workspace where you can start to drag things around and create that visual documentation makes the translation to other teams and the communication across teams, not understanding and trust, just that much higher so that everyone can work more efficiently. So I'm going to try that hack.
Yeah, definitely do. Let me know. Let me know how it goes, and yeah, I'm can definitely play around with examples on that because that would be really fun.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go play with that. So I think this is a good stopping point for us
Yep.
today. Thank you so much for taking us through some of those shortcuts and hacks. I feel like we've all got something to go play with now. So I can't wait to see what people come up with. And we'll see you next week.
Yep. Ditto. Take care, everyone. Chat with you soon.